Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about using the TI-83 graphing calculator. TI-83 graphing calculator is going to be pretty much a requirement for just about any math class that you're going to be taking here at Somerset Community College. So it's probably a good idea to make sure that you can get really familiar with using that as a tool. One thing that I'll point out about the graphing calculator, remember it is a calculator. All it can do is crunch numbers for you, so it can't actually do the algebra. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but whenever it comes down to it, it really doesn't do things like solving equations. But what it does really well is crunch numbers. So, how can this calculator be your friend? Well, whenever it comes time to really work with those big numbers, especially the numbers that are hard to hold in your head and really have a sense of, that's the best time to really start using that calculator. Okay. So, some of you may have a TI-84, some of you may have a TI-83. Whenever it comes down to it, there's really not a whole lot of difference between the two calculators, at least from what you will see in operation. Now, the TI-83 here has a little bit less memory than the TI-84, and if you get down into it, the TI-84 has some special applications, and it can do some special finance things, but for your regular usage in the math class, you really won't notice a difference, and all the commands work the same. Other big difference is that there's just a color coding scheme difference, and we'll go over that here in just a little bit. Okay, so start off. How do I get a calculator going here? Well, if you notice, down here at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is the on button. So I'm going to put a calculator over here and show you, if you follow along. If I hit on, okay, you can see there that gets a calculator started. Okay. In its default mode, the calculator will usually open up in what's called the home screen. You can see that that's this blank looking screen right here. That means it's ready to do your basic operations. Okay. And then there it is. Okay. Now, as far as the color coding scheme goes, on the TI-83, you can see here that there are some things that are in orange. Well, that's color coded to match the second button. Now, on the TI-84, you can see that this button up here will be blue, and the matching lettering with that is in blue as well. Well, that's a code to tell you that the command that is just above this key right here is accessed through a sequence by hitting second and then the button. So, for example, here, if we turn the calculator off, we're going to go second and then off. So let's go ahead and do that. Second and off. Oop, calculator didn't go off on me. Okay. One thing I'll note about that, the calculator does have an automatic power off feature, so if you do leave it running for a period of time, after about 5 minutes it's going to shut off. But that's probably not a really good idea to keep doing overall, because your batteries are going to run down if you keep doing it. So make sure that whenever you're done that you do turn it off. Now, one thing about the power off feature, if you have some things that you've been working on your screen and you do power it off, when you turn it off, it's going to stay in memory. So once you turn the calculator back on, those things will still be back up on the screen. Okay, next section, looking at the mode button. The mode button actually is set up in a default for the calculator, if it's never been used, where all of these areas are highlighted down the left. This is the default way for the calculator to be set up. So if you happen to get some really weird looking answers out of your calculator as you've tried to use it, if something in this mode screen is highlighted in one of these other areas, that may be actually what's going on. So it's a good idea to double check that under this menu right here. About those menu options, okay, there are 3 options along the top. You can see here normal, scientific, and this one actually stands for engineering notation. Okay, those are different number formats. As you get a little bit later into 065 and maybe up into 110, you might be working with numbers in scientific notation, and I can guarantee you will whenever you start in chemistry or physics. But for most of your mathematic operations, you're probably going to want your calculator to be in this normal mode. To actually change that, notice I'm going to use my arrow keys. I move over to select the option that I want. I hit enter, and now it has selected scientific notation. If I want to go back to normal, I'm going to highlight that and hit enter. Now the calculator is back in normal mode. For the next option down, you will see that it says float and then it has a series of numbers. What that sets is either what's called a floating decimal point or a fixed decimal point. So what I mean by a fixed decimal point, I will set my answers to always be to these certain number of decimal places. So for example, if I arrow down and then I move my cursor over and hit enter here, my calculator is now set to give me a fixed number of decimal places of 2. So let me demonstrate what that's going to do here. If I go back to my home screen by hitting second and mode, I'm going to perform a basic operation. So say that I take, let's do 2 times 5. Okay, we know 2 times 5 should be 10. But remember that I've set that to a fixed decimal place of 2. What does the calculator tell me? It says 10.00. So it's stuck 2 more decimal places after that one there. Okay, but we know 2 times 5 is in fact 10. So it's actually better if we leave this in floating mode so that it gives us the number of decimal places that we actually need for our problem. Now you might be tempted to use this fixed decimal place to round to a certain place value. It's not a good idea. The calculator is not always 100% accurate. The next line down, you can see that there is an option for radian and degree. Radian and degree are 2 different angle measures that whenever you're taking a trig class you may need to switch between those at this time. We're not actually going to cover trig at this time though. Now, next options down there, it says FUNC, PAR, POL, sequential. Okay, those things are used whenever you're in a higher level calculus class for setting the types of equations that you can enter in there. Most of the time your calculator should be in function mode. Okay, so we're going to go back again to the home screen. So I was back on the mode screen. To go back to the home again, second and mode. Okay. If I want to clear an entry off of my screen, of course I can just hit the clear button, and that erases everything that is up displayed on my screen. Okay, so let's actually do some mathematical operations. You can see that the basic mathematical operations are all here along the right hand side of the calculator. This enter key down here is actually what you will do whenever you want the equal sign. So if I want to do 564 times 38, I'm going to do 564 times 3, 8, and then hit enter. So I see that 564 times 38 is 21,432. A similar operation can be performed for doing addition, subtraction, or division. Now what if I want to perform an operation on the last answer that I just pulled up? Well, if I go second and then the negative sign, you can see that the calculator says ANS here. That stands for the last answer. So let's just add 5 to my last answer. So if I go plus 5, notice that it's saying ANS plus 5. If I hit enter, it has now added 5 to this entry up here. Another handy feature that I can use is to pull up the last entry that I've performed, the last calculation. So I'm going to put a calculation back in here, the first one that I did. Okay, we saw that. Now if I go second, enter, you can see that it has dropped that same problem back in on the screen. Where does that come in handy? Well, what if I had accidentally reversed my digits? That's a really common error to make, is to reverse digits as I'm entering them. So I've pulled up the last entry. If I arrow over and change, notice that it replaced the number that I have highlighted. Now if I hit enter with those two numbers replaced, it's performed the calculation. It's also handy if I want to insert a number in between to, again, pull up the last entry. If I arrow back, okay, I need to be on the number that is after where I want to place the insertion point. If I go second and delete, notice that my cursor has changed to an insertion cursor. Now if I hit 0 here, you can see that it has moved the 8 over and replaced that with a 0. Now if I hit enter, I can perform that new operation.